noted Bob's Norwegian-colored tie this morning, and so it is Sidna Mai for those who observe. And with my last name being Ruud, I have to, give it up to the ancestors today. So, blessings to our Norwegian neighbors this morning. And peace, grace, and mercy to all of us today from Jesus the Christ. Amen. Well, this is the second Sunday out of 3 that we are hearing from Paul's letter to the Philippians. It might be worth it to have it in front of you as we have it this morning, that first reading that Bob read. And for those of you who weren't here last week, that's all right. Just a little bit of catch you up on this. Paul, the Apostle Paul, established churches, and then much of what we have in the New Testament are letters that he wrote, or people claiming to be him wrote, to churches. And so Philippians is a letter that Paul himself wrote to the church in Philippi, which is in Greece. So whenever you're reading these books of the Bible, you have to remember you're reading other people's mail. And one of the things that's good to remember, too, is that Paul likely never had it in mind that we would be reading this in South Minneapolis in 2026. So you have to keep that in mind, too. One of the things that becomes clear is that Paul really loves this congregation, this people in Philippi. He spent time with them. He lived among them. And now we know and hear that he's away from them, and he's writing to them from jail. He's put in prison. And he's expressing joy. How cool is that? So today's reading in chapter 2 includes what scholars think is probably an early Christian hymn. It's in that poetry section as it has it in your bulletin. And Paul uses this song to remind people what it really means to follow Jesus, what it really means to believe in Jesus. And the song really says and outlines kind of the Christian basics of what God is up to. And so Paul recites this song. Jesus, though he existed in the form of God, did not regard equality with God as something to be grasped, but emptied himself, taking the form of a slave, assuming human likeness, and being found in appearance as a human, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. And then verse 2. Therefore God exalted him even more highly and gave him the name that is above every other name, so that the name given to Jesus every knee should bend in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue confess that Jesus is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Just curious, do any of those words sound familiar to you? I know some of us in Bible study, we said if you know anything from Philippians, you probably recognize parts of that. And so Paul communicates these Christian basics. He starts by noting, here is God in the flesh, God living and walking among us. That alone might throw people for a loop. After all, what kind of God would decide to be human? If you're a God, why come down to human level? Usually it's humans trying to be God, not the other way around. Because if you walk around as a human long enough, you know real humanity is kind of messy. Real humanity is limited. Real humanity carries a lot of problems and conundrums. Humanity carries hardship and pain and worry. Those of us who gathered to help spruce out the grounds yesterday, we remembered that humanity carries sweat and blood and maybe some tears. But that's the first thing that Christians proclaim. The Word became flesh. At Christmas, I'm often fond of saying it this way. It means God was in dirty diapers. How about that? Each of the 2 years I've been here now, during the Easter season, I note the paraments that are on the altar. Do you see what's there? A manger. Here we are in Easter, but there's a manger on the... I don't know if we lost the other Easter one, but the manger reminds us where God shows up in this life, with us, in dirty diapers even. There's two things about this. One, it means God really knows us, experiences our life. We're not alone. And then the second thing people understood, if God takes on human form, it means the ordinary, mundane, and normal human life is held in God. The ordinary stuff of your life, of our lives, the daily grind, the worries, the hardships, the joys, the struggles, are held in the life of God. As you go out later today and you drive the car home, or you watch something on TV, as you prepare meals, as you talk to a neighbor, God's in all that. And then the hymn wants to make another powerful point too. Jesus, full of all God's power, did not operate the way that powerful ones usually do. For instance, if you were a god in the world, what would you do? Immediately my mind goes to power and spectacle and these things. But it says no. He didn't amass a bunch of money. He didn't rise to political might. He didn't conquer other nations. He didn't wield his power to influence the stock market. He didn't pressure people into following him. He even avoided these things. There was one point in the Gospel of John when the people, after being fed, remember the feeding of the 5,000, they came to him and it says they wanted to make him king. And Jesus says, you don't know what you're talking about. When the soldiers come to arrest him in the garden, Peter or one of the other disciples takes out a sword and cuts off the ear of one of the guards, and Jesus says, put your sword away. That's not what I'm here to do. And when Jesus is with Pilate, Jesus declares that his kingdom is not of the same nature as the kingdoms of this world. What did he do instead? I love the window behind us. Many of you have looked at it for years. He emptied himself. He emptied himself. I thought this week, what if the powerful billionaires all emptied themselves? But that's not what happens, is it? Actually, one did. Yvon Chouinard, the originator of the Patagonia company, in September of 2022, gave up the entire company, worth $3 billion, his entire share, and put it in a trust to the company so that any money that that trust makes has to be put back into the company for purposes of combating climate change. So $100 million a year goes toward that. And he is still alive and no longer a billionaire. What if we all did that? Jesus comes to us and offers and empties himself for the point of that we do not need to spend time trying to transcend this life. Rather, we spend our time deeply in and immersed in this life. I'll say something that might not be grasped or might not be liked. The goal of Christianity isn't really to get to heaven. Christianity is always about bringing heaven here to you. Paul writes from prison Not a fun place at any time, and certainly not in the ancient world. Yet he communicates joy. For if God's power is made in Jesus, if that's how God chooses to show up most powerfully in the world, it means that God is powerfully with Paul. One of the phrases which has been helpful for me over the years is to think about the game of limbo. Remember, when's the last time you played it? Probably a little while ago for most of you. And you think of how low will you go? That's what God is up to in Jesus. How low will God go? And I like to say, well, where are you? Where are we? That's how low. The hymn then turns to another radical proclamation. What happened with this crucified, humiliated, empty Jesus? Well, God exalted him above all others. Not the people we often exalt. We often exalt the stars, the mighty, the achievers, not empty losers like Jesus. And then the song gets radical, and you have to hear this with first century persecuted Christian ears who are ruled by Caesar. Where on the Roman coin it says, Caesar is Lord. And the hymn says, Jesus is Lord. So that all knees will bow to that one in heaven and on earth and under the earth. Jesus is Lord of all. It was a revolutionary thing to proclaim as Christians in that time. It may be becoming even more revolutionary for us to proclaim it now too. Jesus is Lord. The crucified one who emptied himself, who came to join us in our humanity, in the lowliness of all life. Well, Christians kept sharing this message. They thought it was so important, they kept sharing it. They kept copying Paul's letter, sending it to other communities which needed uplifting, communities who had been divided, communities where sadly the message of being a Christian had gotten warped into a matter of pride to be held over other people. And this song kept being sung. And it's why we still read it today. For the wonderful beauty of the gospel comes in this statement, it is for you. It's for you that he was born. It's for you that he taught and ministered and suffered. It's for you that he died. And it's for all of us that God has lifted him up. It's for us as a collective people of faith to remember what it is to follow that person. For he emptied himself for all of us. Amen.